Hi friends, Jenny at Clover and Violet here, and today I'm going to be teaching you a fun new technique called Quilt As You Go. You might see it written QAYG in places, and so this is a technique where instead of creating a piece of patchwork and then sewing it all together and then placing it on your batting or your fleece and quilting it to the batting, you actually quilt each individual scrap to the batting as you're going. So quilt as you go. We'll be making a small project, and I'm just going to show you some of the ways to get a really cute finished patchwork using this quilt as you go technique. Now, you'll notice in most of my videos and patterns, I use fusible interfacing. I really love Pellon fusible thermolam, but I'm just using regular batting for this. Now, I am not ironing my quilt as you go as I go, but if I did, I would definitely want to make sure to be using regular batting because you're going to be sewing small pieces on the batting. Now, if you don't iron it like I do in this video, or like I do not, then you can use fusible batting, quilt the whole thing, and then iron it at the end. I just used regular batting because I had a scrap on hand about the correct size. So here is the finished piece that I made. I already have a ribbon sewn onto it, but you can see the little squares all sewn on, and they're sewn on mostly individually. So grab your scraps. This is a great project to take care of all of those, and let's get started. So for this quilt as you go technique, I started off with a square of batting, rectangle of batting that is bigger than the piece that I want to make for the top of my project case. You can do this any size. I'm just using regular non-fusible batting, and then I have laid out all of my pieces just to get an idea that I have enough squares to cover this piece. Now, once I sew all of these with all of the seam allowances, I will likely find that it's a little bit smaller, and so I might put a border around the edge or add additional pieces. But to avoid having to cut too many pieces and then find out I wasn't using them, this is where I'm starting. So I've got all my pieces kind of squares and rectangles. Everything is smaller than 2.5 inches because I'm working with an finished size of 8 by 10 for this project. So this piece is actually about 11 by 9, and so hopefully by the time these all shrink down, I'll still have 8 by 10, but we're gonna have to actually just sew it to see how it works. So take your pieces, get them all ready. This doesn't have to be in any particular order. If you work hard on a layout and you want them to stay in that order, then by all means take a photo, and then we're just going to take this over to the sewing machine and we're going to literally quilt as we go to piece this piece together while we're sewing it. So let's head over to the sewing machine and get started. Okay, so we're at the machine and we have our quilt as you go piece ready. So I've taken all my squares off of my batting because I'm just going to do this in the very random and kind of an improv way. And I'm just going to start with this square, and I've placed it in the center-ish of my piece. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to start sewing. And then I'm just going to quilt this entire piece down with some 1/4 inch quilting lines. So I'm going to go to the end of this piece, and then I'm going to lift my presser foot. I'm actually going to turn this way a little bit. Go over about 1/4 inch from this other edge. I'm going to lift my presser foot up, and then I'm going to choose another piece that's about this same size. And this one's a little bigger. Let's see if I can find something shorter. Okay, there we go, about the same size. It's okay if it overlaps. You can trim it if you'd like. And I'm going to sew this piece down, right sides together. All right, and then I'm just going to fold it over just like so. And I'm going to stitch it in place. And then I'm just going to quilt as you go on this piece. All right, and now I'm going to add another piece just like this. But you can see this piece is coming up a little short, and that's okay because for this method of quilt as you go, I am just going to keep on adding and adding so that the piece grows, and there's going to be sometimes fabric under it. I'm using all fabrics that are a similar color scheme. And so it's going to be okay if they're multi-layered. Now, if you wanted your pieces to be more even and less covering up any old scraps, that would be when you would want to join a couple of pieces before you put them on. So we'll probably do that as we get a little further down this piece, but for now I think it's really fun just to have all of the pieces be kind of overlapping and different sizes, and it gives it a really fun look instead of looking just like a log cabin or something. Okay, so now I'm coming to a place where, all right, so now I'm coming to a place where I want to add a bigger piece here than what I have. So what I'm going to do is choose a couple of these littler pieces that I want to use and see how they fit together here in this space. Oh, here we go, that's perfect. So these two, I am just going to take and I'm going to sew them together first. All right, so I've cut my fabric and now I'm going to sew these two together. And then I'm just going to finger press them open. And you could trim this side, but since I'm just doing this all here, I'm just going to leave it. So I'm going to now place these two right side down on this piece that I have, and I'm going to sew this long seam. And then I'm just going to open it up, and I didn't necessarily need to cut it, but since I have two, I wanted to open it up and then sew here. And then you can see how by sewing these two together before, I now have seams that don't exactly match up right here, which is that quilt as you go look that I'm looking for, rather than it just looking like a log cabin that just goes around and around on itself. And so we're just going to continue to build this out and see if we have enough pieces or if I need to gather some more. But I'm going to just come down here for my next addition. Oh, and the other thing that I do want to mention is that now I've sewn these strawberries as a directional print. And so I'm going to want to keep in mind that this is going to be the front of my project if I'm going to fold it in half or something like that. And that it now has an up and a down. And so as I'm placing additional pieces, like I said, that's just something I'm going to want to think about. So I'm just going to sew the rest of this and let you just watch. Okay, so one other technique I want to show you is that if you're adding and you want to distinguish your pieces even though they were sewn together beforehand, you can switch directions during your quilt as you go. I'm going to quilt this piece going vertically. But then I'm going to stop at the center seam, take a few stitches, and then come back this way. On my machine, about 3 stitches is 1/4 of an inch. And then I'm going to switch directions to sew horizontal stitches on this next block. So that way, even though they were joined beforehand, it still gives them that little bit of distinguished look. So now here you see, even though these two pieces were added at the same time, they do have a bit of a distinguished look because I sewed them 2 different directions. This isn't necessary. Right here I've sewn these 2 the same, and up here these 2 the same. I just wanted to show you, especially as you get to adding maybe 3 pieces together at a time at times, that sewing them in multiple directions can really make your piece look unique. Okay, so I am going to just go and finish the rest of this, and then I will show you back at the cutting table when it's all done. Okay, so here we have our finished Quilt As You Go piece. You can see that the lines kind of show you where I added on new sections, but that sometimes I went a different direction so that it looked less like one big piece. Like here we have 4 pieces and this one goes this direction. But this bottom piece is all one right here, which is also 4 pieces, and I just sewed the same direction, and same with this side. So whichever you feel most comfortable with and which you enjoy, that is how you should quilt your lines, and just kind of experiment and see what feels best to you. So now we're going to trim our piece. And I'm first going to just square it up kind of based on my batting size. So I know this edge went over, and so I'm just going to trim it off. And then same with this bottom edge, but I also know that my piece wasn't square because this was just a batting scrap. So I'm going to line up with this straight edge and then just trim this batting off the bottom a little bit, and then we're going to turn it over. And that actually is going to bring us all the way to the very edge of this bottom piece. And so then I'm going to line up this square as well, and this piece ends right here. You can see the batting exposed, and so I'm going to use that to trim that side. And then again we'll trim the top, and this is my lowest point right here. So I'm just going to make sure that my piece is mostly square. And this piece actually turns out to be exactly 8.5. So my ruler is 8.5 wide. So my piece is now 8.5 by like 11.25. It's a little crooked on the front, and so I'm just gonna again square it up this direction now and make it 8.5. Let's make it 8.5 by 11. And we'll just trim this edge so that it's square. Actually, you know what? I'm going to trim it off of this side because this front piece is narrower. And so this is what I love about Quilt As You Go, is that you can really do it exactly how you want it. And all right, so now our piece is 8.5 by 11, and we can turn this into anything we want to, but it was just a fun way to create some slightly unique patchwork, to quilt it as you go and have fun stitching those straight lines and kind of puzzling your pieces together. I did have to add several of these pieces. I think all of these and all of these and this piece were all after the fact from my puzzle of fabric. So as you're making your fabric, just remember you're going to lose quite a bit in your seam allowances, and it's helpful to just have extra, but I like to kind of put it together, see how it's looking before I then fill out those last bits, just because sometimes different things stick out to you, and so that is just a great way to fill it out. So here's our Quilt As You Go piece, and I hope that you've enjoyed making this with me.